Hello, hi, my name is Chloe Johnson, and this is my presentation on We Teach Who We Are. I wanted to start off with this quote: whoever our students may be, whatever the subject we teach, ultimately we teach who we are. I personally believe in this. I think that what we grow up with, where we grow up with, and what influences we have as a child all the way until the present time really make up our decisions and habits, because we end up caring about these people or these things that happen to us, and then that affects us, and then we later, oh, I like this because my mom did or my mom didn't, and things like this. So realizing this in my older years and starting to do yoga and becoming a yoga teacher, in living over here, I started to be more aware of my thoughts, and I started to be more aware of, okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I like or don't like or feel an aversion or attraction to this or that? So getting into that, and then also getting into my studies, I learned more about implicit bias, which very much interests me. So I'll start with my childhood, where I come from. I come from Cedar Hill, Tennessee, next to Adams, Tennessee, the home of the Bell Witch. I don't know if anyone knows that. But in Cedar Hill, Tennessee, it was a very quiet, close-knit, loving, supportive community. We literally had one gas station, one post office, two churches, and one community center, and that was it. And we all went to one school. So growing up in this sense of community, it was everything was related to everyone. Everything was related to everything else. Everything was supported on everything else, and everybody really helped everybody else out. So this was my great fortune in my childhood. I was fortunate to live in such a loving and supportive home as well. My mother created it great for me. It got me involved in the community in every aspect. We went to Girl Scouts, and she was the Girl Scout leader. And I played softball. Both the community center and the baseball field were across the street from my house. And my mom was a teacher at the school that I went to. So growing up in that, it definitely affected me, especially when I was younger. I can remember setting up my stuffed animal dolls and borrowing one of my mom's old grade books and writing all these fake names down and pretending to take attendance and teach a lesson. But as I got older in my teenage years, I, of course, rebelled and was away from that. And, oh, I'm going to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, be like my mom, even though I loved her and I definitely saw her as a huge influence in my life. I wanted my own path, so I got away from that. But Another influence that I had in my community was it's a very small farming town in Cedar Hill, Tennessee, and it's also Tennessee known as the Bible Belt. We're very close to our religion and churches and things like this, and the community was a part of that. So everybody went there, everybody had activities at the church together and picnics and things like this and other events. So it was so close, and even on my street, other than the community center and the baseball field across the street, I had the two babysitters I had that lived two houses down, and the church was another house down from them, and it was very close knit. So although I did have this great fortune, I did have some struggles before kindergarten. When I was between the ages of 2 and 5, I was a child of divorce, and so with my situation, the court did not make a decision on where I should live, so I continued to move between my mother's parents and my father's parents' houses. This uncertainty at such a young age, between 2 and 5, I can remember thinking, okay, I don't have control over where I live or my bed or things like this. So I started to think about, okay, what can I do in the future? When I grow up, I can do this. And so I started to create what I wanted in my life in the future and how I would be able to have control, even though I knew I couldn't now. This created a sense of resilience in me, and also a self-reliability in myself. Even though this was a misfortune, and the struggles of this for a child is uncertain for sure, it did give me a chance to become adaptable and problem solving in these difficult situations. And then I soon came out of that, even though I was with loving people, I soon came out of that and was in this loving community with my mom in this small town. So I was very fortunate, and that also created a sense of gratitude in me, that I realized, oh wow, I really have it well. So I did not take anything for granted for sure. So then I'll move on. High school and college years. I will go here. Our children are only as brilliant as we allow them to be. This is relevant for me. In my later high school years, I decided that I was a little bored with my school, even though it was a very loving and supporting community. It didn't really offer a lot of diversity, and it didn't offer a lot of school class options. And there was a town next to mine called Springfield, Tennessee. The school was much larger, and it offered AP classes, which I was very interested in. It had a larger budget, more resources, and so I applied and was allowed to go, and I had my driver's license then, so I just drove over. Having this, going from an AB honor roll, I got my first C and my first initial time with failure, and realized, oh wow, so there is failure in life, and what do I do with it now? So I learned how to deal with failure and how to be okay with that and come back from that and keep going. And I also went from virtually no racial diversity in this small farming town to a large racial diversity, to the point where I was a racial minority at the school. And so dealing and adjusting with that and learning how I fit in was very interesting for me. So I did learn a lot going to this. Taking on more challenges at the high school level really helped me to prepare for my college level. I had a lot of challenges, and not knowing what I wanted to do, I went from music business to theater to film to literature and then I just ended. I was like, okay, I have enough between these three colleges that you see here: Belmont University, Volunteer State, and Elizabeth Community College. All three of them accumulated a lot of school interest, school loans for me, and I decided, okay, I'm just going to work it off, figure out what I want to do, then I'll go back later. So I started working off. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just tried this and that, retail and waitressing, things like this. It wasn't until I was at Elizabeth College in Kentucky that I realized what I really wanted to do. I decided to take a job. I'm good with kids. It would be easy for me to be a substitute teacher. And then that's when I was given the opportunity that hit me like bricks. And I decided this is where I'm going. So this happened in Maine first, and then I went back to Kentucky. But living in Maine, when I moved up there, I had the opportunity to work at Old Town Elementary, and I was working there as a substitute and other schools in the RSU 34 district. And one day at the end of the day, the principal took me aside and said, we have this position. This lady is on maternity leave, and we need an Ed Tech 1 to take over. Would you mind being a temporary substitute for the remainder of the year? And I thought, that would be great. I don't have to drive around anymore, which is what my thought was. I don't have to drive from school to school. But what I didn't realize is that this was actually what I wanted to do. I had no idea. So taking the opportunity, I started to work one-on-one with a 4th grade boy who was diagnosed with ASD and ADHD. So I had never worked with special needs students before, and this was the first time. So it goes without saying, I felt a little overwhelmed and untrained. I was in the middle of the year. I didn't have any professional development classes. So I automatically did, okay, what do I do? I can write. So I've always been a writer ever since I was young, especially in my adolescent years. I was a huge, avid journaler. I had 3 different journals, one specifically for dreams, one for goals, one for events. It was very detailed. I had a schedule book, and I had a book that I would write my songs and poems if I felt like it, and I also had a short story book and all these different things. So I decided, okay, I will document. So I wrote down everything because I didn't really know what to do. No one told me what to do. So I wrote down everything. I wrote down his schedule, where he went, how he responded to everything in his environment. And then I started to find a pattern in when was his trouble times, when was his strength times, and how did he respond to those. Then I started to implement by trial by error, which is not the best way now that I've been taking these classes and I've learned this, but I had no other notion. So trial by error, I started to find out what worked for him and what didn't work for him. When I was working with him at the beginning, I had to take him out during the course. After direct instruction from the teacher, I would take him out and do the book work outside the room, bring him back in, and I would walk with him to different activities throughout the day and make sure that he was behaving appropriately. By the time I left, I didn't realize I was doing a good job. I was just trying to make his school day better for him and make friends and feel comfortable in the school. By the end of the time there, and the lady came back from maternity leave, he was actually in the room 100% of the time. He could do his whole book work there. I didn't have to give him prompts of correct behavior. He was doing such a good job. And I didn't realize until my supervisor came to me, and she had never said I had ever done anything right. She was always a very, what would you say, like, she didn't express herself very often. She was a woman of few words. And she came to me at the end and said, "Oh, I tried to get the principal to keep you on. You've done such a good job, and there's no place for you, and I'm very upset about it." And I had no idea that I had done so good, and I didn't really think about that part other than I loved what I was doing. So they found me a job at the middle school down the road, and that was it. I was hooked on special education. So I was working in special education, and nobody would hire me full time as we continued to get worse and worse in the economy. Healthcare was up in the air, things were changing. So I couldn't get healthcare. My healthcare bills were going up. I couldn't pay my school loans. I had to live at home with my mom, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I couldn't pay off what I was intending to pay off, so I could go back to school and do special education. And my friend was living in Taiwan at the time, and she told me, raved about it. Oh, it's such a great place. It's so safe. The healthcare is so cheap. You can make so much money, and you can pay back your school loans. So I jumped at it. I said, okay, let's do it. And 1 year, 5 years ago. So I decided 1 year I would go. So I went. I've been teaching here English in Taiwan for almost 6 years, about 5.5 years now. I've been able to pay off my school debt. I was able to go back to school through UMM and UMA. I was able to even save a little money, and I was able to travel to other countries and explore other cultures. So something that I've been taught by living over here has definitely become an adaptability, how to become a learner. I had to learn a new language. I had to learn a new culture. I had to learn how to relate to people here. And then I also learned how to be resilient. So I've learned a lot of things in my life, and living in another country has just put another layer on top of that. Even though I do love living in Taiwan, I definitely want to get back to working with special education in the States, and that is my ambition, is to get back to special education. So since I am in a sense, a holding pattern in education, gathering knowledge and accumulating this, getting ready to graduate and finish my degree, I just can't wait. And so I've started some projects here in Taiwan. I've noticed that English teachers here aren't necessarily teachers per se, just graduates from college who don't really know what to do and they want to travel. So they don't have experience. They don't know how to do classroom management. They don't know how to create lessons. So I've come up with an idea to create a professional development workshop to apply to these after-school English classes to make the quality of English being taught here better. My goal is in the future to become a special education director, but my overall goal over all of it in whatever I do from now to the professional development until the future with being a special ed director is to make the best influence I can make over education in the largest scale possible. because I love teaching, I love children, and that is my passion. That's what has created me, is my life. So thank you for listening to me being influenced and creating my future. Thank you.